Hey YouTube. The last video that I posted was me going to autocross. I had a lot of fun at that event. I brought the car home, and then as we were trying to drive it, we ran into a lot of problems where the car just would not drive right. I had some recorded footage of, ultimately complaining about how sometimes, you make plans for things and then they don't work. I might show some of that here, I might not. It's plugged in on that side. I don't know if maybe it shook loose. I know, but it's connected to one of these adaffuses. I said it's connected to one of these adaffuses unless one of those fuses went out. Good. Maybe. Weird though. What ended up happening is that inside the car, I've got all these AM gauges. So like I've got a water pump gauge here. I've got the air fuel ratio gauge as well as the oil pressure gauge here. And ultimately what was going on is that one of the gauges just stopped working entirely. And I have a link ECU that's tied into a number of safeties, one of them being oil pressure safety, and then the other one is associated with just the fuel going too lean. So because those safeties are tied into those gauges, the oil pressure gauge wasn't working. So whenever you'd rev the car up to like 3,800 RPMs, it would start to backfire. And it's because of the safeties that are in the link. So I went through all of the wiring, kind of tore it apart. Now you can see that it's all buttoned up under here. I mean, maybe you can, maybe you can't. But basically what ended up happening was I took the pigtail from the air fuel gauge and plugged it into the oil pressure gauge. And when I did that, it would show that there was still sensor power, so there just wasn't power getting to that gauge. And because all the wires are where the pedal assembly is, I think I probably just kicked it when I was driving, or it just shook loose on the way home because the crimpers that come with the adafuse are like pretty garbage. So I went ahead and fixed it, loose power wire sort of deal. Now that the oil pressure gauge is working, the car is working, it's driving totally fine, driving totally normal. Wasn't able to do autocross this time around just because there's so much snow on the ground. So I think the plan for my time hanging out with the CRX is just going to do some odds and ends. In the previous video that I did, there were a number of issues with the car that were just like generally unresolved. I bought an ASR subframe kit, so that's something that I'll do when I have time. But the weirdest problem, and probably the most annoying, is that the brake dummy light is always on. So I tried to solve this by like changing out the master cylinder wires, making sure that they were connected correctly, by messing with the e-brake and checking out the wiring. But I discovered when I was driving the car that if you had significant G's to one direction, it would turn the light off. And what's actually happening, and I'll set up the camera and record, but what's actually happening is that if you look down here where the seat is, the seat itself has a bracket, and the bracket is basically flush up against the wall here, and that wire is just caught in there and is grounding itself out. So the goal today is going to be take the seat out, try to fix that wire or at least relocate it, and then move the seat to kind of a more optimal position now that I know where it's supposed to be from driving it. And I'll set the camera up while I take the seat out and try to fix everything. And then once all of that's solved, hopefully my brake dummy light will turn off and it's no lights on the dash instead of just constantly having that brake light on. So this is the problem. This was smashed up against the seat, so because of that, it kept grounding itself out, so the brake light was always on. So I'm going to fix this wire, extend it, and then move it to a place where hopefully this won't happen again, and then we won't have a brake light all the time. So, problem solved, hopefully. Nope. I don't have an answer. Solved my problem yet. Car doesn't want to start sometimes. Full charge on the battery, tried using a jump starter, wouldn't start. Tried using a large battery, wouldn't start. This time, I jiggled the key in the ignition and then turned it over and it started. So, I don't know. Maybe some of the ignition components are loose and that's what's happening. So, no problem for later day. I can always clutch start the car when it comes down to it. But yeah, major pain in the ass. So as you can see in the previous clips, the word of the day is electricity, and the CRX has always had a number of electrical gremlins, but this one has been sort of the worst. The brake light being on was really annoying, but there's nothing that's quite as annoying as having the car not start consistently. And this sort of starting problem that I've had has been getting worse and worse, where originally it would be that like just sometimes it wouldn't start. Whereas now it's like oftentimes you have to turn the key like 15 to 20 times to actually get it to turn over. And I found out in sort of that last clip, which was more recent, that if you jiggle the key, oftentimes it doesn't take as long to get it started. So naturally, I changed the thing that was the most obvious to change, which would be the starter. So you can see that kind of that process of taking it apart is going on now. The intake manifold on these cars is extremely difficult to take off, especially given the like nuts that are underneath because they're just buried against everything. I did the best I could, but that was probably the hardest part. Actually putting the starter in is super easy. So once I got all that taken care of, it didn't solve my problem. So I'm not even going to show video of me trying to start it again because it didn't solve my problem. But given the like jiggling the key sort of thing, the next thing that I decided to replace was the ignition switch, and I have some footage of that here. It's fixed. So there you have it. As far as the ignition switch replacement goes, it is kind of hauntingly easy to replace it. It only really requires a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver, and then maybe wire cutters or needle nose pliers to actually pull the ignition like cylinder out. So it really reinforces my decision to put a removable steering wheel on here as far as like the whole anti-theft part of it goes. But with replacing that, the previous one actually doesn't look that bad. I mean, there was like an alarm system that went in here, so there's like some of it that's like all spliced together, and like that could be part of the problem. It was a little bit on the loose side just because those Phillips screws are so hard to get at. And then inside the actual cylinder itself, if you can see it, it's a little worn out. So that potentially explains why if I like jiggled the key, I'd eventually get it to turn completely and turn over. As you saw, whenever I turned over the key, I was able to start it right away twice in a row. So I'm hoping that this has solved the problem. But there are plenty of YouTube videos out there on how to actually replace this thing, and it's like pretty stupid easy. So I didn't want to go into detail, but yeah, I think that I finally solved the like starting problem, which means that now the car is pretty sorted to just have fun and drive. So as you can see, I'm walking over towards the car at this point with an ASR subframe. I bought the subframe a long time ago, and I even mentioned in another video that I had plans of putting one in. These subframe braces are nice because as you start doing more and more of this sort of like fast turning track autocross stuff, you run the risk of bending the rear subframe just because like it's a compact commuter car. It's not designed for this sort of thing. So I didn't do any crazy time lapses or anything like that. But I'll go ahead and show you the final setup so that you can see kind of what the subframe looks like in the car before I end up going to my next comp day. All right, I'm going to show you what I've got so far before this thing dies. So if you're looking down in here, you can see that the plates that are there are torqued and they're connected to the subframe brace on the other side. And then I'll go ahead and lift her up and I'll show you the stuff that's underneath. The last thing I have to do is figure out the end length, and then otherwise everything is basically set up. And I don't think I'm going to be hitting the exhaust, but I mean, we'll see. Okay, I'll show you the rest. So you can see that up in here where the sway bar connects to by the exhaust, you can see that it's really close. There is a gap, but again, a lot closer than I would like. But given that the exhaust is on hangers, I'm a little bit less concerned about it causing major problems as long as it doesn't crush the tubing. And then if you look up here, you can see that those are the bolts that go through connecting the brace to the other side, those brackets I showed you earlier. And then the brace runs all the way across the subframe and then bolts in on the other side to the other brackets that I showed you. And then here is where the end link is supposed to go, connecting to the sway bar. However, I'm going to have to look and figure out exactly what the geometry needs to be. And then the control arms I decided to replace as well, given that the previous ones don't even support end links, and while replacing them, I went with the spherical bushings instead of going with the regular rubber ones. And I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make, but, you know, everybody says they're better, so we'll just go with they're better. And then the end links on both sides are going to have to get, you know, torqued in, put together, and all the other suspension parts are torqued already. The OEM stuff that I had on here, because this is from the DX CRX, so it doesn't even have, like, the holes for the end links. So because of that, I went ahead and decided to do the upgrade on here. So, I mean, ultimately, we'll kind of see what happens, but I'm going to try to figure out how long these end links need to be and get this done as soon as possible because it is getting late and I'm tired. Alright, so even with the fudge factor, I mostly got it right. So I'm going to show you what it looks like with the car actually down. I know it's pretty dark. Ooh, I might have to grab a flashlight so that you guys can actually see that it's parallel. Now you can see that it's, right now the car's completely down off the lift, and you can see that it's parallel the way that it's supposed to be with the end links hooked in. I know it's kind of funny seeing the end link on the outside like that, but on the other side, there's just no feasible way I could put it on the inside. Here you can see
that the exhaust is still very close up in this corner right here. Not touching, but close. And then the exhaust again is very close over there where that bolt is, so I just had to put it on the outside. There was just no other way that this was going to work out. But it's again parallel on this side, maybe a little bit more drooped on this side than the other, but I'm pretty happy with it. I'm not going to go ahead and muck around. I'd like to just get it right, get it aligned, and then if I need to like fidget with it, then I can later. So mission accomplished. I managed to do everything I wanted to. So in contrast to last time that I was here working on the CRX, this time it was actually successful, and it just goes to show that sometimes you just gotta like take a break and keep trying, and eventually you get all of the shit done you wanted to get done. So with that, if you stuck around and watched some of this, I really appreciate it. But I'm hoping to take the car racing pretty soon. So after this video, hopefully the next one will be another racing video. So have a great day. Thanks.